You hear people using like black hat technique. And for you particularly, I know you use the term white hat technique. And so I wanted to maybe help us define what those are, because I've seen a lot of people doing SEO making bold promises, and not all of the methods seem to be as legitimate in the process. So I'd love for you to unpack that for us.
Sure. So Google has a set of guidelines that they have for how they want people to conduct themselves online. When you're building out a website, when you're building out a web page, when you're promoting your website or your web page, there's a set of rules. And if you stay within those rules, that is called white hat. You stayed within the parameters that Google has approved for what they think is correct behavior, and not trying to manipulate their algorithm in a way that they don't appreciate. So that's white hat. If you start doing something that's outside of those guidelines, which can be very, very effective, they consider that black hat. And the idea is when they do updates to the algorithm, or when their bot comes in looking for things, if they suspect that you've done something black hat, they can demote your website, and they can demote it, just drop it farther down. So instead of being on page 1, now you're on page 3 or page 4, or they can remove your site from search entirely. And if you get on the naughty list, if they've identified something that they don't like, it's tricky to get off. It's tricky to get your ranking backs, if ever. Now, there is then what they call gray. And that's where, because not all the rules are clear, which is actually a frustrating point. The rules aren't always clear, and Google does not define them very well, even when asked directly. And they intentionally keep things, I think, a little murky, so that they can pretty much do what they'd like to do. But if you're in that gray space, they call that like gray hat SEO, where you're like, I don't know, it's right up against the edge. Most of the things I would still avoid, as you don't want to take the chance of getting your site hit. But black hat is outside the guidelines, white hat is directly inside the guidelines, and then gray is kind of in that blurry spot where there are some things that are not clearly defined. Now, something to keep in mind though, even if you're doing completely white hat SEO, you can still get hit in updates, because Google might perceive you've done something even when you haven't. And there isn't necessarily a review board, where you can go in and say, there is if you've got a manual action, like Google, like somebody at Google has actually looked at your site and said you've done something wrong, and they actually might tell you, we have manually demoted your site. You can't ask for a review there. But by and large, they do what are called algorithmic demotions. And that's where just the algorithm has decided, and you have to hope that the algorithm decides that you're good again. So you can still be completely within the guidelines. You can get hit. That is something that happens, and that's one of the more frustrating things in our industry, that it's just not fair. There's an element of unfairness for sure. And so while definitely SEO needs to be part of your marketing strategy, don't make it the whole thing. Make sure you've got other channels that are bringing you traffic, other ways that you're promoting your products or your services. Because if you have it all within one basket, whichever basket that might be, it can dry up. And in digital marketing, it can dry up quite quickly, even when you've done nothing wrong. So be very careful with that. And I think a lot of people, especially in the last year and a half, have learned that lesson very harshly in SEO, where they were just relying on Google traffic and they weren't doing anything wrong. Algorithm changed. Google went after some bad actors, and in going after those bad actors, some good sites got swept up in it as well, and they have not recovered. So be very careful with everything within SEO, but still, it's still an extremely strong channel and something that you should be doing.
I think when you do crush it, it crushes exponentially and continues, because you get some traffic that you didn't even need to pay for it, but you invested time, you've invested effort, you've invested your knowledge. And if I can take away some of the key things from the conversation on SEO here, is just the fact that it's not that hard to get started, and there's some very basic things that most people could do, which is just understanding what would people be searching for to discover the service or product that you offer might be a great place to start. And then the key places for them to place it. You spoke about the title, the H1, the URL itself, and understanding that it's not about the whole website, it's about specific pages. And just doing that, you've already done more than 50% of the work, which could actually yield some results in your industry. Being more specific, say locally. So if you're operating your practice from a certain area, there's probably some good wins you can do there. And there's some surprising amount of traffic that might be coming for your specific keywords. So to me, there's definitely some low-hanging fruit opportunities that are completely underutilized in this age more than ever, since more and more people are moving away from SEO, looking at more shiny objects. This one has its foundations. If you're doing a good business, you have a website and you want to be able to have a page. Now, writing the content on that page has become easier because of AI. So get your basics in, get some stuff that might be relevant to keywords, and that might be a great place to start. And then from there, I would just encourage people, is this something that you could go and do? Say you've listened to this podcast. Would you recommend people say like, hey, book out a weekend, get real curious about it, and just do a lot of stuff to at least get your basics covered? Would that be a great strategy for anybody who's at ground zero here?
Yeah, think about, there are probably 5 to 10 pages that are going to be extremely important to your business. Start with 5. That's not overwhelming. When you build a website, it does kind of feel like writing a book. And I'm sure everybody has had delusions of grandeur that they're going to write a book and it's going to be amazing. And then they start to write that book and they realize how much it sucks to write a book and how much they don't want to, and how not good at it they are. It can kind of feel that way with a website. So don't worry about writing the entire book at once for your website. Get a few of the important pages on there, stuff that you really need that would just make sense to have for your service or your business or your product or whatever you're doing. Get those done. And look at the type of page that Google is expecting. One mistake that a lot of people make out of the gate is, let's say they've got a physical product that they're selling or whatever. It's one product. And so they've got a product page because they've got a website that has the product on it. And they try to optimize that page and it just doesn't go anywhere. Like it won't crack the top 100. And then if you do the search, though, for that particular product, what you notice is that there aren't any product pages on page 1. It's all long form articles, or it's category pages, something like that. Give Google the page it is expecting. So you can't teach Google anything new. You can't say like, this is actually a better page, Google. Google doesn't care. So like look at the page that Google is expecting for that term, and then that's the page that you should build. So if you're trying to optimize that product page, you might only have 250 or 500 words on the page, but those long form articles have 2,500. Within how the algorithm works, you're never going to compete with those longer pages because they're getting the terms in more times, they're providing more information, etc. So make sure that when you decide, okay, we're going to go after these 5 important terms, then look at the results for those terms. What is there? What types of pages do you see? That's the type of page you need to create. So if I can stop anybody from making a huge mistake at the beginning and wasting a lot of time and spinning their wheels and like going in a completely wrong direction, is after you identify that term, look and see what type of page is there. How many images are on that page? What other features are on that page? What do they look like? What are they doing? That's what Google's expecting, and that's what you need to create in order to give yourself the best chance.
Thank you so much for listening to the Selling with Love podcast. We have some previous episodes you can tune into right here. And if you prefer the short form content where you get to the point in under 10 minutes, we do have a ton of clips from our best episodes that are being shared on this channel as well. So pick which one supports you the most. And of course, thank you for liking, subscribing, and of course, selling with love.